Prime Minister. Less than a year ago, you said that China was the biggest security threat to Canada. Do you still believe that?
The security landscape continues to change, and in a world that's more dangerous and divided, we face many threats. That's the reality, and the job, my responsibilities as Prime Minister, the job of the government, is to manage those threats.
Welcome back. We continue our coverage today of a very significant set of agreements Prime Minister Mark Carney has signed with China to counter Donald Trump's trade war on Canada. The Prime Minister says the agreements signal a reset in Canada-China relations that were significantly and negatively impacted when China arbitrarily detained 2 Canadian citizens for more than 1,000 days between 2018 and 2021. One of them is Michael Kovrig, and he's with us now. Hi, Mr. Kovrig. Good to see you, and welcome back to the program. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thanks, Vashi. It's good to be here again.
I wanted to start off, pardon me, just on your initial reaction to what was announced to kind of conclude this trip by the Prime Minister on tariffs.
You're talking specifically about electric vehicles, right?
Correct.
So it's huge news. There's no question. It was one of the scenarios that I had considered possible, but I didn't think they would go quite that far. So look, this deal is not just about tariffs, right? It's a strategic trade-off with long-term implications because China didn't just suddenly become more reasonable, right? It's a reaction to the world situation, and what it demonstrates to the Chinese Communist Party is pressure worked, and Beijing will remember that.
Yeah, what precedent ultimately could that set?
So look, let's look at it this way. What did Canada gain from this, right? Canadian farmers got real short-term relief, especially on canola. That's great. You know, you need to free the hostages. And so there needed to be some way of releasing some of that pain, and that matters. Those tariffs were painful and politically targeted. But the relief is time-limited and reversible, right? Beijing kept the leverage. What did Canada give up? Canada broke ranks with the U.S. on Chinese electric vehicles. Even with quotas, the signal's big. Market access is negotiable under pressure. And so that teaches the Chinese Communist Party that pressure works, and it's likely to test that again. As for how Beijing sees this, the CCP is going to see that Canada is flexible under economic pain, and so strategic partnership here isn't just about trying to build trust. In fact, it's mostly not about that. It's about training expectations. And this is China saying, this is how problems get solved. You accommodate, we reward. And that's really challenging. It has huge implications for Canada's industrial policy, for example.
Does it make things trickier with the United States?
Absolutely. It's a very serious challenge with the United States, right? I mean, in general, when Canada talks about diversification, and as you know, I'm a big advocate that Canada needs to diversify trading partners and do things differently, right? But Canada cannot trade its way out of its security dependence on the United States. And replacing U.S. dependence with China dependence would be worse, not better, in so many ways. Regardless of what your warm feelings are, or how you feel about Donald Trump, replacing Washington as a major partner in any respect with China is going to put you in a situation where Washington can apply much more leverage and pain on Canada if Canada drifts too far out of bounds. And so the risk is not just Trump's reaction; it's also a structural risk. Canada's economy is deeply integrated with the United States, especially the auto sector. Rob Ford, every automaker in Canada has talked about this. Doug Ford has talked about a lot of this. And any perception that Canada is weakening allied coordination with China is likely to create downstream costs for the broader Canada-U.S. relationship, right? And so it's a real risk, also long-term economically. My understanding of the United States situation is it's likely to revert back to being more engageable for Canada in the future. Give it time. But economically, China is not going to generate a more sustainable trade balance with Western countries. Its trajectory is inherently imbalanced. It's not going to get better.
Why is that the case?
It has to do with the structure of the Chinese economy and the fact that the Chinese Communist Party has certain ideological pathologies about production, right? It's obsessed with production. Xi Jinping, it calls itself a socialism with Chinese characteristics, but it's not even remotely socialist. It's state capitalist, and its priorities are to dominate the commanding heights of technology and manufacturing and industry in the 21st century. It's all right out there, and it's Made in China 2025 and other policy plans. And so it funnels huge amounts of capital and resources into manufacturing, which leads to vicious internal competition, which means Chinese manufacturers can't make profits at home much, and they produce way too much, and they need to export much more. And that creates this vicious cycle that they can't get out of economically. I had some hopes that Mark Carney, of all people, could try to talk them into changing their economic model, a very faint hope. And as long as that model continues, China is going to continue having massive export surpluses that it needs to dump into other markets, forcing those markets to restrict those exports. Meanwhile, its property sector is in the tank, and many other aspects of the Chinese economy are badly stagnating and are heading into a Japan-style lost decade. So they have so many economic problems, and they're effectively exporting them to Canada and other countries.
At many points in advance and during this trip, the federal government's framing around it has been one of sort of economic pragmatism and necessity vis-a-vis the treatment of us by the United States, the trade treatment of us by the United States. But there were moments during the trip where the Prime Minister appeared to take things further, including during meetings with the President and other top officials in China, where he even sort of surmised about a new world order. And that certainly caught the attention of some people in the U.S., but also many people in Canada. What did you make of that?
I thought that was a very worrisome way to express things, frankly. Look, diplomacy is necessary. Likewise, Mark Carney standing and grinning when shaking Xi Jinping's hand. That's not very comfortable for someone like me to see. Diplomacy is necessary. Grinning is optional, and looking like a supplicant is undignified. That's not a good look. So the optics could have been better. And talking about a refreshed strategic partnership while intoning about a new world order while you're sitting in a meeting room with the Chinese Communist Party really carries some very Orwellian overtones. And I think it risks, rather than trying to acknowledge realities, actually endorsing and supporting narratives that are deeply problematic and dangerous, right? It's a deeply unsettling message, and it's a very dangerous game. Mark Carney in general seems to be kind of following the Australian playbook of emphasizing trade and business and not talking about security. That can work for a while, but only if you still quietly take increasingly robust measures to defend your country, and you can't stay silent forever, because that undermines confidence of allies, and it doesn't let the Canadian public understand the real risks that they're being drawn into with these kind of arrangements.
I'll leave it on that note. Thank you, Mr. Kovrig. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
When we come back, the 3 things I'll be watching for this week. Stay right there. We've got more question period just ahead.